Welcome back to Beacon on the Storm. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest for you. I have Todd Tarbert, attorney and CEO of Semble, an expert financial solutions provider specializing in low-cost loans for nonprofit organizations and social impact enterprises. Hey there, Todd. How's it going?
I am doing great, Bradford. I really appreciate the chance to join you this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And where do you hail from, Todd?
Well, our offices are in Bellevue, Washington, but we spend a lot of our time at our place in Sun Valley, Idaho, and that's where I'm at today.
Fantastic. All right. So, Todd, I don't do a lot of pontificating on this show. I don't really do a lot of expounding on anything. I like to leave this to my guests because I think you're the expert and you have something to contribute to my audience. So why don't we begin just by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. I grew up in the state of Washington. I was blessed to have incredible parents. Our next door neighbor was my grandparents. Had a great Christian grandmother that raised me in my faith. Again, I was very blessed to have somebody that really modeled and demonstrated the character of Christ. And so from that foundation, I was baptized into the church. I had a born again experience when I was 17. And, just typical journey. There's times going to college and different things, it's sort of in and out of my faith from an active, but it has always been a very important part of my life and my life journey. And I'm grateful for that. I believe that is, that's a gift that I've been given, and I cherish that. And, today as I continue to, in life's journey, I've been blessed with, a career that is fulfilling. It has purpose. It has legacy impact. And along the way, I got married to an extraordinary woman. We'll be going on married 36 years this year.
Congratulations.
And we have two kids. We had our first grandchild this last year, and our daughter's getting married this year. And every one of our kids and their spouses and fiance are believers in Jesus Christ. And,
fantastic.
I could stop right there and say, what? I'm very blessed, very fortunate. And yet with all that, we still have, there's challenges in life. And I think that's one of the great parts of the life journey. And the faith journey is, we know we will always have challenges in life. And the question for all of us, every person that's ever lived is, how am I going to deal with those challenges that inevitably come? And at one level, what strength, where am I going to find the strength to walk through those challenges? And will those challenges beat me down, or will I grow from them? And I think that is just, one of the great challenges that we have, and it's part of the human, condition. And I think, and it's, as part of your program, and I love your program, and I love what you're trying to do to reach and to share a message of hope to men, I think in particular, but obviously it resonates with anyone. Yeah. People that have found themselves in a state of hopelessness. Because many of them and most of those people, and I think as I've shared with you before the program and otherwise, I do a lot of work with people in recovery.
Yes.
And at the foundation of the journey of people that have found themselves, bound by addictions, is they found themselves hopeless. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, and I truly believe it's a little bit of a cliche statement, but let's say alcoholics.
Sure.
Drinking isn't the problem. Drinking is the solution to the problems they face in life, the uncertainties, the challenges, the fears, the resentments, because they haven't been given the tools otherwise to recover from that. And so, I am so grateful that, at the foundation of my ability to deal with the challenges I've faced in life, and there's been real ones, It has been grounded in the faith that, you know what, I'm not God of my own universe, that there is a creator that created me with design, purpose, and that I can lean into that power as I walk through those challenges.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. You're an attorney. I used to be an attorney. I'm retired now. But that alcoholism it's huge in the legal profession. I think the attorneys are the number one alcoholics of all types of professions, maybe after psychiatrists, I think it was. And it's every now and then it flips. And so it was definitely not necessarily drinking for fun. It was also drinking for that, getting out of the pain of the study, of the fear, of the worry and the doubts and all of that. So I spot on. Thank you for bringing that up, Todd.
You bet.
Now, my show is for men, like you said, and it does resonate with others. I've brought women on as guests. I think this message is for everybody, but specifically, I do want to speak to men. And before I do that, I want to define what a man is. So I'd like to ask you, what do you believe it means to be a man?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that it's such a complex question. It shouldn't be a complex question. It's become really complex in the world that we live in, but frankly, it's not complicated. And I mean, I think we got to go back. We look at how God defines man. I mean, God makes it very clear at the very beginning of His Word. We are made in His image. We're designed to be productive. We're to be men of work. We're designed with purpose and mission in life. And that's, and we're built to be relational. God is relational. He designed us to be in relationship with Him. And, in many ways, I actually believe at the foundation of despair, the hopelessness for many, and these are people that I encounter, is that they have this God hole. They don't, many of them reject even the concept of a God, let alone a lack of understanding or acknowledgement that they've pushed this, God away. But I truly believe that is at the heart, this broken relationship that occurred. And the reality is, here we are in the Passion Week, which is all about how to restore this relationship that was broken. Man was designed to be in relationship with God first, and in many ways with ourselves, with God, and then with those in the world around us, starting with our spouses, our family, our community. But if we don't have that first relationship, that hasn't been restored. And the only way, that we believe from a Christian worldview, that relationship was restored through the works of Jesus Christ, through His life, His death, and resurrection on the cross.
That's right.
That was God invading this world, saying, "You, man, who I created, who I love so much, I designed you to work, but here's one work that you can't accomplish on your own. You cannot achieve the relationship I want to have with you. You can't heal what was broken. I'm going to do it for you through the life, the death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And all that I ask is that you recognize the love I have for you by accepting this free gift of salvation."
Yes. And I think it's interesting that when asked about this, Jesus said that the only sin that is not forgivable is blasphemy, which is the rejection of the conscious rejection of that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically, it is the very essence. I mean, in many ways, when men, and I'll just speak about, the men in the audience, but it's anyone that is separated. But when men have reached that point of state of hopelessness where they get to the point where they don't know if they want to go on anymore. In almost every instance, that is a result of what, you distill it down to: free will, self-will run riot.
Yes.
And that is really, the separation was the very beginning. That's the human condition, is I want to do it my way. No, I don't want to, fall under the authority of anyone, anything, God, anyone. And the problem is we realize that a self-will, self-determination is typically a life that leads to one that we never achieve our expectations. We can't fill our satisfaction because we have a soul sickness that can only be filled through God. And so anyway.
Yeah, and that's a fascinating point, because you have children yourself and I have a daughter, and I'm sure you remember that phase of childhood where they don't want to do what you say. They're going to do whatever they want, but they have to have that structure, that guidance, that father figure in their life, making sure that they see the path.
They do. No, I completely agree.
All right. So now, Todd, before we started, I mentioned that my audience isn't necessarily believers, all right? The show is not to be preaching to the choir, which is why I always like to ask, why is faith important? Because before I can get them to have faith in Jesus, they have to understand what faith is and why they need it.
Yeah. Well, the reality is everyone has faith in something. The question is, and really faith is, another word for faith that might be easier to get your head around, because faith is sort of a loaded term. In the legal field, we'd call that a term of art. It's sort of, there's a whole lot. You say, are you a man of faith? Well, that sort of has a connotation that, you're attend church and maybe you read the Bible. So, and I think just using that term could actually, create a reflex from some people. And I think another term that what I find that might be easier for people is the term of trust. Where do you put your trust in? Where do you put your confidence in? Where do you draw strength from? These are all sort of maybe different forms of faith, but the reality is every single day people wake up and they place their trust and faith in something. And I think a big part of the journey is, and people, even with the people that I work with in recovery, a really big part of that journey is getting them to get honest about, are you experiencing freedom? Are you happy or experiencing joy from the places where you're placing your trust and faith in today? And the reality is, if you really distill it down, there's really only two pathways that we can go down. We either place our trust in ourselves, our own abilities, or we start to place our trust in somebody or something else.
Yes.
And so maybe our spouses, maybe our, significant others, maybe, a parent, or maybe government, we let somebody else, we become dependent on something else. And obviously we start to, as part of the recovery journey is getting honest about where are we placing our faith and how is that working out? And, and that starts this journey on people taking a look. And I think each of us understanding, where am I drawing my strength, my faith, and what are the results of that?
Absolutely. All right, Tom. So I'm actually really interested in your answers to this next question. I'll phrase the question. How do we lead men to Jesus? But before I have you answer, I've had people say we need to beat them over the head with the Bible. I've had people say we just need to set a good example and they'll find their way. I've had people say that you try to drag them to church and hope they stick. What's your answer? How do we lead men to Jesus?
Yeah, and I think that, and again, I'll just draw upon my experience in working with people that they've found themselves in a hopeless state. They don't believe in a higher power. They don't believe in God.
Sure.
But they're broken. Mm-hmm. And, they've reached that point. There's, sometimes later on time, we call it, they've reached a point where they've been given the gift of desperation.
Yes.
And, my role is, I recognize my role early on is I do not save anyone. I am not going to be their savior.
Hmm.
I'm not the one that's going to, come up with a clever saying or twist their arm into believing in Jesus. I need to realize all the work of salvation is the work of the Holy Spirit. And at the very best, I am but a mere conduit by the way that I am portraying and showing up with that person. So, first and foremost, I have to be willing to show up.
Yes.
I have to model the sacrificial love that Christ demonstrates or God demonstrated through Christ by just showing up without conditions, without expectations, without remuneration. And so we show up with the heart and mind of Christ, just being present, being there. 2 weeks ago, I met with a guy who was basically on life support in the emergency room because of alcohol poisoning. Day after day, I just showed up. I wasn't preaching to him. I wasn't beating him over the head with Jesus. He was recovering because, at the beginning, step one is to make sure he doesn't necessarily die.
Yes.
And he was on recovery, and I knew he wasn't going to die. But I just showed up. I became present. I was there to pick him up when they released him from the hospital, took him to his home. I was there helped him get his food for the days, different things. To me, the first step in sharing Christ is just we develop a relationship with people. They know that we actually care. And these are just sort of basics. A lot of people talk about this, but we show up and we're there. And one of the things that what has been really important for me in my evolution of my faith journey, and as I share the hope in Jesus Christ, is I always remind myself, and I never forget, God's grace and his mercies are beyond my comprehension. So it's not for me to determine when and the timing and the format that somebody receives and recites sort of the salvation message. That is out of my hands. And so I remind myself, I'm to do, just take that step of faith, and I have to stay out of the results business. That's between that person and Jesus Christ.
That's
And
right.
so that's just a fundamental thing. I'm not expecting, that they're going to respond to my timeline in the format that I want. And, I just keep modeling a life as best I can, as flawed as I am, in a way that makes my life and my journey and my story compelling to that person.
Wonderful.
And there's nothing more enjoyable. I mean, the grace rewards is when I'll have some of these men that have maybe a hostility towards a concept of God, maybe months down the road, being in relationship with them, and they will eventually go, Todd, tell me about your faith. I know you're a Christian, but can you just share more about that? And then I I actually sat down with a gentleman yesterday who I've been in a relationship with for 3 years. We've known each other, and he finally 2 days ago he asked, "Hey, would you mind sitting down with me and just share with me your belief in God and why you believe?" And so for the first time in 3 years, I shared my message of hope and why I believe in Jesus Christ, and that's what gives me strength in overcoming the challenges I face in life.
Oh, that's incredible, Todd. Now, can I go back for a second? Because
Yeah.
you mentioned the gift of desperation.
Mhm.
Now, the reason I started doing the show in the first place is because I came across a statistic that 80% of suicides are men. And when I asked my audience why they would even consider killing themselves, I got 3 answers: that they're lonely, that they feel rejected, and they feel that they don't have a purpose. Why would you say, in essence, those things are a gift?
Well, I would say it's because,
And I already know the answer, but I'll go ahead.
well, part of it is, I would say, let's just use the parable of the prodigal son. I mean, every one of those things that you outlined, he encountered in the pig pen, right?
That's
he was
right.
on his knees and he's going, oh my God, I'm lonely, I'm sick, I'm tired, I feel I'm going nowhere, I'm probably going to die, I feel hopeless. But in that moment, when he was on his knees, he had a moment of clarity. And this is the gift of desperation. We're broken so much. There's enough humility that comes in. There's enough honesty and humility that shatters the ego and pride enough that allows God, and I believe it's the work of the Holy Spirit, that is whispering to that desperate man in that pig pen, they're down. And the Holy Spirit's whispering, there's a better way. You can turn and go in a different direction. It doesn't have to be this way. Oh, yeah. But you have to make the choice. God does not force his will. I won't force you, but I will help you if you get up and start trudging the way home.
I love it, Todd. I don't want to ask the rest of the questions I sent you, if that's okay. I want to know, what advice would you have for someone out there who may be listening right now, who's not sure, they're not quite at the gift of desperation stage, but life isn't so good. They maybe want to find a way out. How can we help break through before they get too bad?
Yeah. One, there are communities out there where they never have to feel alone again. I mean, you identified one of the key areas of desperation that drive people to that point that they would start to consider suicide. And it's the hallmark of hopelessness, which is just almost impenetrable isolation. They feel alone, even if there's people around them. There's no connection with people. There are communities of recovery, whether it's Celebrate Recovery, AA, other communities of recovery, that you can walk in, and in a matter of weeks, you will have a community of people that can relate to you, can understand where you're at in the journey, and instantly you will have people that you can connect with. And you never, after you step in those rooms, you will never have to be alone again.
Fantastic.
So you can address the aloneness issue. And so that's, to me, that's just, have the courage, be willing to take that first step and walk into those rooms. And there's the resources are out there. Again, two of the big ones for the recovery communities there. I do believe in the 12-step recovery programs for people. And there's all types, regardless of what the condition that somebody that might be listening is dealing with. It doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol. It could be codependency, other addictions, dependencies, whatever has caused them, that has a hold on them so deeply that has caused them to absolutely feel worthless, disconnected, no sense of purpose or direction. There is a recovery community out there. And again, Celebrate Recovery is a great one because they have a broad spectrum of hurts, habits, and hangups that they will help address. Wonderful. So that would just be one. Today, the first thing to do is don't do it alone. Pick up the phone, call someone. Just start that rebuilding process. Find somebody that you can get honest about and truthful, and just say, I'm struggling. Because I believe that part of our human nature is people want to help.
Yeah.
And so find trusted people that are actually, healthy. It probably, if you're a drug addict, it probably doesn't help to be calling your dealer to, find a healthy communities and start rebuilding relationally. And if you build relationally here in the horizontal world, and if you get into a spiritual program or recovery, eventually a person's going to start exploring. Do I need to start to experience this pathway of finding a higher power that I can relate to? Again, they start there. And you start with this basic fundamental starting point. You got to admit, I'm not God.
Yes.
I don't have the power to control people, places, and things around me. Therefore, maybe I better start to explore, where can I find faith and trust in something that is greater than myself?
Amen.
And that starting point is finding yourself in a community of supportive people that can love you. And sometimes we say this, and it's so true. Find a community that will love you until you can love yourself.
That's beautiful. Todd, this has been a fantastic interview. Truly, thank you so much. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they be able to do so?
Yeah, they're happy. They could just simply email me at todd@semble.com, and that's TODD at Semble, SEMBLE.com. And that'd be the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'd love to hear from anyone. I mean, anyone that is dealing with any of these issues. I mean, this is my passion. God has blessed me with my own personal experiences in this area, that I can relate to anyone that is going through this. And to me, it actually has been the greatest blessing in my life. And I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful for the chance to be with you, Bradford.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Now, as we wrap up, Todd, do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
No, I would just, again, I think these things, it's so, I just share, I'm in, as I indicated, I'm here in Sun Valley, and you probably don't know much about this valley, but it has an incredible history of suicide here in this community.
Really?
So this topic, at times it's almost epidemic proportions, and I don't know if it's every month, but it is so pervasive here for the size of community. So this topic is so critical, and all I can say is, if somebody is, and I would also say somebody that is out there, if they know somebody that is, sort of hinting at with suicidal ideation, we have to take it seriously. We have to intervene. We have to show up at their doorstep and just go and get honest about, hey, and are you contemplating suicide? And as we say, working with guys that are doing that, we make it very clear that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And we try to sort of, resonate that point, and we get there and we surround them with people, get them engaged in other people, redirect them from that pathway, however we can. It just, my greatest mistake in my life was God gave me a divine appointment for somebody. It was a gentleman that I didn't know him. He had actually done something inappropriate in our neighborhood. I called him, and I was about to tell him how wrong he was. And he basically said, Todd, before you get started, I want you to know I was absolutely wrong. There was no excuse for what I did there in your neighborhood. He goes, I'm usually the one that's making these calls. He goes, and then the conversation turned. And he goes, Todd, I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm spinning out of control. I'm trying to hold my family together and my career, and just I can't do anything right. I can't stand myself. And I mean, I'm listening to this, and God made it clear this is a divine appointment. And I listened to him, and I got at the end. I go, you and I don't know each other, but if you would like to get together, I'm here to help you, any way I can. And he paused and he goes, Todd, I need that. Do you mind? And so I was leaving for a trip. So this was on a Thursday. I was leaving for a trip the next day, and I told him, I'm heading out of town. Can I call you on Monday? And So I said, can I call you Monday? And he goes, yes. And I go, will you be okay until Monday? He goes, yes, I will be fine. And he said, I can't thank you enough for being willing to do this. I didn't call him Monday and he killed himself on Tuesday. And, it really, it's just one of those, because I knew that call was a purpose. That was, God designed me as a man to respond in that moment, and I didn't. And so, this issue, I mean, it points to one of the deep moments of my life that I regret, that I didn't follow up. And I always vowed from that point, I will never, ever, if there's a hint out there that somebody's going through this, I will do my part the best I can to show up, be there, encourage somebody else to show up. So that's my leave is, I just don't want anyone to live in the regret that I live with.
Certainly. God bless you, Todd. Truly. Thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate having you. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Well, thank you, Bradford. I really appreciate your ministry. Keep it up.
Thank you. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, keep looking for the light in the tempest. God will show you the way.